Welcome to Tales, Tunes, and Tomfoolery starring Jerry Springer, along with Gene Galvin and me. I'm Megan Hills. We're recorded live in front of a brilliant studio audience at the Folk School Coffee Parlor in Ludlow, Kentucky.
My daddy came home.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Jerry Springer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Please. I am starting to well up.
Aww.
Hey, can I ask you to do something for us? And by the way, we're going to talk in a minute about very serious topic, the scourge of gun violence that's been plaguing America. And we're also going to hear from the Price Hill Hustle, and that's going to be a real treat. They're just a great musical group. But I want to ask you something. I know you do a TV show, do you not?
Really?
Hello?
Yes. And you make quite a bit of money there from what I observe.
I do my show, but I volunteer.
As a volunteer. And for like AARP, you're like a retired senior citizen that volunteers to do a show that's destroyed the American culture, basically.
Absolutely sabotaged it.
Well, not just the American culture, Western civilization.
Okay.
As we know, yep.
But in
ask you
fairness, Western civilization's been around for 1,000 years.
Right.
So
It's
I
had
think
its run. It's had a good
its run. Good run.
And it only
nicely
took
done.
one Jerry Springer
Let's
to
give
make it
Eastern
topple.
civilization a shot.
Let me ask you a favor.
Yes.
When you do your TV show,
Yes.
you do a warm-up. You come out in front of the studio audience and you do jokes. And it's very entertaining from what I've heard. I've never
do
been
that
invited
yourself?
to the show.
I do my own.
Really? I thought a lot of people had other comedians and stuff.
They all do, but I did it simply because that's really what I want to do. I don't care about the show. I just want to do the warm-ups because that's a lot of fun. Plus, also, it loosens people up in the audience. If the first time they see me is when I'm coming out to do the show, sometimes if there's someone that you know and suddenly they're on stage, you feel a little intimidated. You don't loosen up. But if I've already been joking with them for 15 minutes, then they open up and they're much more willing to get their beads.
Okay, let's try something. Megan, just do that thing again. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Jerry Springer. And Jerry, just show us what you do. Do some, send some of that love to this little podcast we do.
You want me to do a warm-up here? With
do
the
a
audience?
warm-up. Do some of the jokes. See what you
Absolutely.
got.
Well, first, let me open with an apology. I was a little late getting in. Some of you saw what happened. This guy came in. I don't think he's here now, and he puts his hands in my pocket, and I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I need some change." I said, "Why didn't you ask me?" He says, "I don't talk to strangers."
Hey!
Whoa. Wow.
And then where's the older gentleman here?
It was an older gentleman I saw.
With the hearing aid.
I saw a guy with a hearing aid
Yeah,
in
and
his
he
ear.
comes in and he says, he was very happy about it. He says, "This is the finest hearing aid money can buy." I said, "Yeah, what kind is it?" He said, 4 o'clock.
Oh, my. Don't laugh. Don't encourage this.
Yeah.
This is...
It seems like the last bit of good news we had, because
Still going.
Yeah, what?
the last bit of good news, we got Osama bin Laden. That was good news.
That's good.
Actually, Osama bin Laden had 8 wives. That was pretty well publicized.
Yes.
Yeah. And but I think it was last Thursday night on the news, it now comes out that apparently a week before we killed bin Laden, he killed one of his wives.
Really?
That's serious. Yeah. Apparently she raised her dress, he saw Bush and opened fire.
Oh, now, wait a second. That's not appropriate for this audience. That's not right, Jerry.
I like that one.
No, that's not good.
You are demented.
That's why I work for you.
Hey, let me ask you something.
No, let's move on.
Anytime Gene starts a sentence with that, it's never good.
Let
Let
me
me ask you something.
Let's admit something, and I'm very proud to say for the first time in my life, well, number one, Megan, I flew on an airplane. First time was this past weekend. And I flew on Spring Air. That's what he calls his corporate jet deal.
Seriously?
His Gulfstream. I got to fly on it.
You took Gene on the... Are you serious?
Now,
We're still disinfecting it.
Well, I begged him.
How was it?
Well, cool, but I had to fly in like the luggage area, which is unpressurized at 40,000 feet, not heated.
They're nice seats. You can't have jeans.
No, you can't
I was
have Gene
all
where
sort
other
of
people could see him.
Fetal position. I lost. Doctor says I'm gonna lose 2 toes, so I'm down to 7 because I only started with 9. But anyway, so we go to Florida. And we went to Florida because our mutual friend, the wonderful Beck family, there are some family members in the audience here, wonderful family. And
These are the
Ryan
ones who are
married
not on
Jene.
probation.
That's
Yes,
correct.
yeah.
And here's the deal. Do you know, Megan, State Senator Tip Kemper has been a guest on this show a few times?
He has, yes.
Very innovative ideas.
That's one
Well,
word.
stupid
That is a-
ideas. Let's
that's
call
a
it
way
what
to
it is.
describe it.
Last
No,
time he was here, and I know that you've had to see an attorney to get a sort of a restraining
and
order
desist.
against him
Yes.
because he's sort of
Yeah,
on
he's
your
sitting on
trail.
you, which is totally inappropriate.
Thank you. Thank
I
you,
agree.
sir.
And I have thought his ideas were very visionary. I have been the one person here that has supported his unique approach to problem solving legislatively. So he came up with this idea, and it's on a podcast that'll come up here shortly, where he proposed that no one be permitted to make any left turns. Rationale's pretty simple. You make left turns, you're turning into ongoing traffic. Statistics show that's where most of the accidents are.
What if you live down the street on the left?
Well, we proved
never get home.
in Florida. And by the way, Jerry rented, when we got to Florida, he rented a car.
Okay.
It was an SUV bigger than Trump Tower, a huge SUV. And Megan, he drove it.
I actually drove.
Did
He
you really?
drives.
Good for you, Jerry.
My people had the day off.
Wow. And in all honesty, how long has it been since you drove yourself?
Well, I drive when I'm home.
Okay.
You know.
All right.
Okay, so I don't drive. Mickey drives. But, once in a while.
But he drove, and we tried.
You know what was interesting was sitting in the front.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
right.
driving
You are
from the
always in
front.
the back, aren't you?
Yeah, really.
The little
'cause
things
it's
you
like
wouldn't think
you
about.
can see things out of that,
And we tried to drive without making any left turns. So we had destiny. Now,
which
by
is
the
why
way,
we almost missed the wedding.
we almost missed it. By the way, this wedding, Jerry, would you agree, was meals. Meals. It was one meal after
We ate.
unbelievable meals.
We're
Food.
Jewish. What else
It
would
was
it be?
phenomenal. But I swear, if we hadn't, when we followed Bobby Beck, was the only way we could get around all these venues where these meals were. But you cannot travel without making left turns. State Senator Tip Kemper is a whack job, in my opinion.
Wow.
now
Well,
you-
we've
you
proven
You
that.
can't do it. It was going to take us forever.
You want someone to take the opposing side?
No, there is no opposing side. It's insane. Jerry. Jerry. Listen,
That was smooth.
I got to ask you something. This gun situation in America, and America has a rich history. We love us some guns, right? We always have.
It's part
And
of
it's
the
in our
culture.
frontier, the evolution of our culture. And yet now we've had another horrific set of murders in Oregon. And that comes on the heels of Sandy Hook. And there you can just rattle these off, the litany of the deaths from American guns, the proliferation of guns. What do you think about all that? What is there a solution? Can anything be done?
Well, I'm probably the 15 millionth person to speak on this now. So, I was trying to think, what would I say today, knowing that this subject would come up, that, we haven't discussed before. It hasn't been said 1,000 times. And I thought I'd take it from the perspective of, I'm a liberal Democrat. And I think it's important that people listening know what my bias is. So we start from there. And I think there's some things we as Democrats do right on this issue, and some of the things we say about it are not necessarily right and confuse the whole argument. It is an absurd argument to start out by saying, even though if we started the world from scratch, that no one should have guns. In an ideal world, no one would ever be angry, no one would ever be violent, there'd be no reason to shoot anything, and et cetera. But for Democrats to argue about, doing away with guns is like Republicans arguing about deporting 11 million undocumented immigrants. So it's a foolish argument. And we should get away from arguing over what the Second Amendment really meant. Now, if you're asking me and I'm in a room alone with God and I have to tell the truth, it's inconceivable to me that the Second Amendment meant anything other than what it says, which was in order to form a militia. So that's the real reason that the Constitution says you can have guns. But forget that. Let's not even argue about that. We're not going to do away with the Second Amendment. And, we're going to have courts that are going to continue to say people have the right to their guns. So let's not get in that debate. It's a losing argument, and nothing's going to be solved by it. So let's assume that people are going to continue to have guns. Now we're on a ground where we can have a rational debate where most Americans will agree with us and we can start to get something done. If we go in saying, yes, every American has the right to own guns, that does not mean that we don't have the right to regulate it. Every constitutional right comes with the right to have those rights regulated. The First Amendment, free speech, that can be regulated. The courts have always held this. You know, you can't yell fire in a theater and stuff like that, or in the early days, pornography or whatever. So there's no question that whatever right the Constitution gives us, the government still has the right to regulate that right for a, and here are the key words, legitimate governmental purpose. Well, what is a more legitimate governmental purpose to cut down on the number of murders that take place in our society? This is an astounding figure, which in my 71 years, it never even dawned on me. I was embarrassed that I literally learned it today by looking at one of the papers. Do you realize that every single day in America, 89 people are killed by guns? That's the average. One day it may be 93 people, one day, 87 or whatever, but 89 people per day get killed. It's 297 people per day that get shot, but only 89 of them die. Every single day. And we're really not going to do anything about it? Rational people of any political stripe can't get together and say, you know what? We're not arguing about banning guns, but let's figure out a way to lessen that number. Now, people from the NRA say, well, wait a second. Cars kill, people all the time. You don't say you can't drive your car. No. But what we did do very successfully is we studied how to make cars safer. And the fact of the matter is that over the years, we in fact have. We started to say you have to have seat belts. We started to have steering columns that collapse. We started to have airbags. We started to have padded dashboards. We started to build guardrails along the highway that would stop, in most instances, a car from going over to the other side and having a head-on. We've done all sorts of things to make driving safer, speed limits included, and the result is that the number of deaths by car accident has dropped since we first started doing that by 95%. We literally, in this country, cut the number of automobile deaths over the last 35 years by 95%. So use this logic now in saying, how can we lessen? We can't. No one's going to get rid of all the guns, and we can't stop some people from going crazy or whatever, or being angry or pissed off and shooting someone. We're never going to get zero crime or zero murders or zero shootings, but we certainly can lessen the amount. Now, you say, well, that's reasonable. Why don't we do that? Here's another thing that should shock you. In 1996, and if I'm off by a year, don't shoot me. But in 1996, the Republican-controlled Congress passed a law, which is still the law today, that forbids any federal funds to be used to study gun safety. We're not even allowed to study it. The Center for Disease Control, CDC, and prevention of accidents and crimes, they wanted to do a study. They're forbidden to study how we can make guns safer. And there are some things we could do. We can't even set up a commission with federal funds to study it. And there's some things we all can think of. By the way, when we said 89 people a day are killed, it's not in the mass shootings. I know that's when we start talking about it and when it's a headline. One of the security guys on my television show, he happens to be a Chicago cop. So he told me this morning, because we were taping shows, that 18 people were killed by guns this weekend in Chicago. And nothing in the newspapers. It just happens every day. So it isn't the mass killings. It's some kid finds a gun in the house. Maybe it's a gang shooting. Maybe it's an accident. Sometimes it's a suicide. Whatever, guns are there. So there's certain things you could do. I mean, you may decide, they're even talking about smart guns now, where you couldn't shoot the gun unless it was yours and whether it's a fingerprint or some chip, that it's clearly your gun. You're the only one where the gun goes off. So if you have the gun in the house and a kid grabs it, kid can't do anything with it. Or a burglar runs in and grabs your gun, which a lot of people are afraid of, they can't shoot the gun. So, I mean, that's something technology can do. I would argue, every school in America right now, even if it costs us some money, we ought to have metal detectors all over the place in schools. You don't go into the school with a gun. We ought to have cameras on the school property outside so there's no one hanging around there with guns. I mean, we do it in airports. We do it at stadiums for ball games. You got to go through, I certainly know, like Yankee Stadium, when you go through there, you got to go through all kinds of security. They look at your, if you're a woman, at your purse or whatever like that, any bag you carry on. So we could do safety things like that. And let's have people that know a hell of a lot more about it than I do figure out how we can start. And obviously, we should have background checks on any human being that buys a gun. And anyone who sells a gun, any person, you don't have to be a dealer. If you sell a gun to someone, you ought to have a document of a background check before you sell it, or you personally can be prosecuted. That will cut down on the number of people that do it. It won't stop everybody. I know that. Someone intent on killing, it's going to be pretty difficult to stop that person. But when you're talking about 89 people a day being killed by guns, an awful lot of that is done just because it's easy, the gun's there, somebody got pissed off and grabbed the gun, and there you go. There are things we can do to lessen the amount. 2013, 83 preschoolers were killed by guns in America. 27 police officers were killed by guns. 3 times as many little children are killed. Doesn't that tell us anything? 89 people a day. We have lost more people in America killed by guns domestically than all the Americans that have died in a war in our nation's history. Revolutionary, Civil War, World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, everything. You take all the American citizens who have been killed in the line of duty in fighting our wars, it is less than the number of people we have killed with our own guns.
Jerry, I wonder if something's changing. And by the way, I have 2 guns in my home, and I don't have them to protect myself from people. I have them more for Alaska trips, but I have 2 guns, and I shoot guns, and so I'm not an anti-gun person. But it seems to me like something's changing. And I'm going to give some credit to President Obama, who, right in the shadow of the killings in Oregon, went right on television and says, look, how many times are we going to be back here doing this? And he got a lot of criticism. Why he's politicizing? Well, who gives a damn if he's politicizing? It needs to be politicized. But I get a sense, kind of like during the Vietnam War, which you and I lived through as young people, when a lot of us fought against that war. And eventually the tipping point happened. Critical mass occurred. And then the rational American masses kind of changed their minds on this, and it shifted. And I get the feeling that regardless of the power of the NRA and their control of the Republican Party, that there's a kind of a tipping happening. And boy, I couldn't agree more. You are not going to come take my guns from me. That's not what's going to happen. But that something's going to happen. You make a great argument about looking at car safety, but the argument always is from the NRA crazies is that and that's disrespectful. I shouldn't say that because there could be NRA people sitting right here that'll kick my ass when I walk out the door. But there are
I'm not
the
with
fanatics, fanatical gun people. Anything you do is a march towards confiscation. But there's no more liberal people than you and I, and we have never talked about confiscation.
It's an absurd thing. We live in a democracy. First of all, people that are worried that the government's going to take our guns, for what purpose?
Right.
Finish the argument. They're going to take our guns to do what? They're already the government. And if we don't like them, we vote for someone else. I mean, what are they going to do? It's an absurd argument. We're the ones that provide the soldiers for the government. And if we don't volunteer for the army, then they don't have an army. It's absurd. It's childish to say that we got to hold our guns because the government may come after us. Really? I mean,
Yeah.
But this election, and I'll quit. I know, and I'm being biased again, but I'm sorry, I'm biased. We really have to worry about the next presidential election. And the reason I say that is the Congress will probably stay Republican just by the sheer number and the way the districts are drawn. If there is not a Democratic president, there'll be no one to veto what this Congress does. And this Congress is a Tea Party right-wing Congress, which is why Boehner's gone. Hardly the poster child for liberalism, but even he's gone. Honestly, if we don't have a Democratic president, forget who's your favorite. That's not even the issue anymore. It's a defensive posture. I want a president that'll stop this Congress because you're going to have no movement on guns. We are going to lose, say goodbye to health insurance. Say goodbye, minimum wage. Are you kidding? All these things are going to be gone if there's no one to veto the Republican Congress. So if you want a reason to get excited about the next presidential race, this is it. We've never faced such a right-wing Congress since the days of McCarthy.
Hey, by the way, other countries, other developed countries, European countries, even some South American countries, developed countries, no country has the statistics on gun deaths that America has. There's just something unique. Well, number one, maybe about our frontier cultural evolution. And number two, it could have to do with a lot of things. There's diversity in America. There are poor people sometimes in conflict with people who aren't poor, teeming urban areas, etc. But Australia, after its most recent big mass killing that occurred at a school, they got busy. Did they confiscate guns? Actually, they didn't. But they cut off fully automatic weapons, even the availability of them. They cut off assault weapons, but they went to work on the edges of the issue. And that's really, to me, the key point. That argument, that drumbeat that has been winning of you can't do anything because anything you do is tantamount to confiscation. Yeah. And there's where I think we may be hitting a tipping point where the masses of America, it's just like the Planned Parenthood argument. Republicans want to close Planned Parenthood centers across the country who only do about 3% of their stuff has to do with abortion. Right. But when you look at national polling, I think it's like 70% of America doesn't want Planned Parenthood closed. This thing could shift in America, and if it didn't take this mass killing, the other ones sadly are right on the heels of this. It seems to be, it's epidemic. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Hey, let's talk some music.
Yay.
And they
yours.
won't be coming from you. But we have tonight with us, and we're going to ask them to come in now,
Yay.
members of the Buffalo Wabs and the Price Hill Hustle. And this is a group out of Cincinnati, Ohio, by the way, and it's one of the better groups. And we tend to reinforce this. I think it's worthy of doing. Cincinnati in northern Kentucky is one of the hotbeds in America for roots music. It's up there with Asheville, North Carolina, Nashville. I'm not talking about the country western scene, but New York, Brooklyn in New York. Yeah. There are places where roots music has really just become very popular. Provoked possibly by Brother, Where Art Thou, the movie that George Clooney did a few years back. But Buffalo Wabs and the Price Hill Hustle are very active in Cincinnati. They play a lot of places. They have an album called Revival, and we're going to hear their first song, and then I'm going to ask Casey Campbell, our own Casey Campbell, who is a music coordinator for the Jerry Springer podcast, to introduce the members of the band. So, guys, take it.
Honey, why you move so slow? Honey, why you move so slow? I'm here all alone, I got 6 feet of rope. Honey, why you move so slow? I guess I've been hanging around too long. I've been hanging around too long. Hit a clock on my wall, ain't got no hands at all. I've been hanging around too long.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Buffalo Wabs and the Price Hill Hustle, and it's kind of funny. And Casey, I'm going to ask you to introduce the members of the group. Casey Campbell on percussion, and a member of the group, Casey Campbell, as I mentioned, is our music coordinator, and he's been bringing us all these fantastic groups,
Yes,
episode after episode. And it never fails. Then he walks in here again with his own group, and it's like, wow.
Turns
it's
out.
I'm telling you, it's
There are
fantastic.
perks to this job.
Heck
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Casey, tell us about the group and who's in it.
I will. We'll just start from my right here on mandolin and vocals. That's Mr. Scott Reisner. On upright bass, this is Mr. Ian Matthew and vocals. And lead guitar and vocals down here, Matt Wabnitz, a.k.a. Buffalo Wabs.
And he's wearing a Yankee hat.
He is.
God
Yeah,
bless
there
you.
you go.
God bless you.
And you guys have a website, pricehillhustle.com,
That's
and
correct.
you're on Facebook, Instagram, etc.
Yep.
And you guys performed, I know, at Whispering Beard Folk Festival in Friendship, Indiana.
Correct. Yep. Actually, Matt Wabnitz here was the founder of the beard. He started the beard in his backyard in 2008 with help with Dan and Matt Williams here and a couple other folks. And yeah, he's the whole reason we're not making any money these days.
That's right. And you guys write a lot of your own music. Was that an original song? I believe
Correct.
it
That was written
right?
by Wabs here. Yeah.
Wow, that's a good song, by the way.
That's a great song.
That's an excellent
Thank you.
song.
Wow.
Would you do us another one?
Yeah, sure thing. We'll do a song written by Mr. Ian Matthew here on the bass. He'll lead us in this song. Very timely song. I think it fits this show very well. It's called Everybody's Getting a Raise.
All right.
Breaking my back 6 days a week on a dead end track, getting off cheap. Paying me as little as the law will allow. I'm so blessed with all I've been given, but I'm awful upset that they call this a living. Barely scraping by until now. 'Cause everybody's getting a raise today. They finally caved on the minimum wage. Honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Everybody's getting a raise today. Every day I just do as I'm told. It's okay if I never strike gold. All I've ever wanted was what's fair. So many poor in a land so strong, been prisoners of war for way too long. Finally getting a piece of our share. 'Cause everybody's getting a raise today. They finally caved on the minimum wage. Honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Everybody's getting a raise today. Keep on trying to make ends meet. They keep lying up and down Wall Street. Seems to be a war we'll never win. They kept calling for blood, sweat, and tears while our boys kept falling upon deaf ears. Glad to see they're finally giving in. 'Cause everybody's getting a raise today. They finally caved on the minimum wage. Honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Everybody's getting a raise today. 'Cause everybody's getting a raise today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know, That ought to be the theme song when we have rallies for the minimum wage to raise the minimum wage.
There you go.
That's a great idea.
Can you get that gig?
Maybe you ought to talk to somebody for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know a
Yeah,
guy?
You know
Alright.
what? We'll check into that.
That's a great
Who's
song.
ever leading the national campaign for that?
Fair enough.
That is a great idea.
Really
I
is.
mean, your song is great, not what I said, but although a lot of the things I say are great ideas.
What Tip Kemper like?
Yeah.
Very Tip Kemper.
Oh no, that's phenomenal.
That's a great song.
Yeah.
Great.
Good job.
Great.
Good job. Yeah, that's a good song.
There you go.
Right here in Ludlow,
But you're not
Kentucky.
getting a penny more. Just
yeah.
To be clear.
Yes, sir.
What is the scene like performing? Like, you guys are really good, and Cincinnatians and Northern Kentuckians know that. You've been on the road some, too, I assume. You've done some road trips.
Correct.
And what's typical of the scene in music today?
Look, yeah, that's the truth. Nothing's typical. I mean, we play a lot of sort of the late night bar spots. That's still a kind of the usual of the music scene, but more and more, and it works really well. We do a mixture of our stuff and then a bunch of really old traditional stuff. That music crosses boundaries and age brackets and everything really well. We're really big with 6 and 7-year-olds and 70 and 80-year-olds.
That's cool.
And so we've done.
well, you got me.
You and
But
Richard
we've
could fall
done,
under.
yeah, we've done like public library gigs and some free park gigs during the summer. A lot of city festivals and things like that where it's all ages events. We obviously do the usual like bar scene and venue, crowd, but
College towns or college? Is this happening on campuses or not so much?
Yeah, it is to some extent. I just think it depends on where you're going. At like Athens, Ohio University, they've got a really solid scene. A lot of people go through there. Ohio State, obviously, with Columbus being so large, they've got it right at their fingertips too.
So it is happening.
Oh, yeah,
around.
certainly.
By the way, back in the 60s, 70s, when we were hitting a lot of the venues where folk music and that explosion that occurred in the late 50s and through the 60s, Peter, Paul, and Mary Kingston Trio, Mitchell Trio, all these, Bob Dylan, etc. And they were playing in a lot of bars. And if you listen to live recordings, and there are some good ones, you'll hear a lot of chatter in the background. You guys live with that too. That's just part of the deal in some venues.
Our
right?
latest album, Revival, is a live disc, and you can certainly hear the chatter and clamor behind it. But I mean, it adds to the experience so long as everybody's respectful of the music. So.
Yeah. And by the way, isn't it cool that a folk school coffee parlor and there are some other places around the country that we would call listening rooms where people come in and they know they're going to sit down and listen to the music. It's why they've come. This is one of those places because I've been to concerts here. I've heard you here, Casey, as a solo. And people, this must be fun to walk into a venue where you're going to be heard.
Oh, absolutely.
And respected
Absolutely.
fully for
small,
what you do.
If you can get a crowd in a relatively small size that really is there for the music, and everybody just pays attention. You feel it. You feel everyone really listening and really absorbing the story, and it's such an intimate experience. So we certainly try to do that here.
And please tip the waiters. That's
right.
Hey, would you take us out on Irene Goodnight? We
Sure
we
will.
always go out on that, and I know you guys are going to do a great rendition of it.
Yeah, you said that you'd never love another, but now it's plain to see that if you're Valentine, I cannot be. I'm gonna hang from your Christmas tree.
You've been listening to Tales, Tunes, and Tomfoolery, recorded live at the Folk School Coffee Parlor in Ludlow, Kentucky. Thanks to Patrick Kennedy for writing our opening song, and to you for listening. Check out our website at jerryspringer.com.
Tonight, Irene, I'll see you with my dreams.
Sometimes I live in the country. Sometimes I live in town. Sometimes I take a great notion You all come back now.
Yeah.